In a speech today, Rishi Sunak will say that people signed off sick with mental health conditions are placing unsustainable pressure on the welfare budget. He wants to overhaul Britain's sicknote culture and shift the focus on what people can do. Now, the number of people signed off for work with long-term sickness is at record levels and has been driven largely by mental health conditions. So the Prime Minister will say that we need to be more honest about the risks of over-medicalising the everyday challenges and worries of life. Is he right to get tough on people signed off sick, Yasmin?
No, of course not, because he's talking in the way he's talking, it's very hardly hidden. It says people who say they're mentally ill, particularly, are just not strong enough, are lying to themselves or others, and that, this problem can be sorted by, and this makes me so, because it's gone on for so long, it's been 14 years, and getting benefits is so hard. I once did, not that long ago actually, did an article, and actually went to these benefits offices with 3 people. And I couldn't go to the counter, but I saw how people were, how they were being treated. And one of them died. And his wife rang me and said, he's just had a letter asking to go to, what are the places called? Job centre or whatever, the equivalent of. I don't know if you ever saw the film I, Daniel Blake. I mean, things are pretty bad. Now, there is a point I think we can discuss about the whole spectrum of mental illness. I mean, is it just not being able to cope with the normal stresses of life? But for this man, multimillionaire, to stand up and say that he knows that these people are what they're lying, they're skiving, it just turns my stomach.
I think the truth is that some of them are. That is the truth. So let me draw your attention to a feature that was in the Daily Mail earlier this week, which I read with great interest. It was a deep dive into what's going on in some of the most deprived parts of the UK and the extent to which the welfare system is or isn't helping that situation. And the reporter there talked to a few men who were just hanging around in the town centre. They were young men, they were fit and well by all visual appearances. Let me quote one of them. They were all on benefits and living with their parents. These were young men in their early 20s. I don't feel ready. I just couldn't work. I can't handle the pressure. I find it overwhelming. Here's another one. At the end of the day, working is not worth it for me. I get my housing costs paid for and I get £1,300 a month. To be honest, I'm better off not working. I just don't want the hassle of waking up at a certain time in the morning and going through that energy. And I'm afraid to say that that is replicated up and down the country. It is far too easy. No,
I'm sorry.
Look at, there it is. There it is.
Listen,
look at the figures, 700,000 extra
you won't
people.
Believe this, but I actually did, and you can look it up, a long feature for the Daily Mail on housing estates, where what were they called? They were called something despicable, like too lazy to work. There was some term. They asked me to go and spend time and to do a piece.
When was this?
This was, must have been, it was before COVID, long before COVID.
So a long time ago. So what we're talking about is a change in statistics.
What I found was the big changes that were made to the benefit system by Ian Duncan Smith and his lot, who claimed to care about people living in these lives. But what I did find was the amount of terror, especially the women in the family, felt about where is the next meal coming from. Daily Mail weren't prepared for this. They ran it as I wrote it. There are, of course, people cheating. There are people, rich people, middle-class people cheating on taxes.
That's what this is about, though, isn't it?
Why
you've just acknowledged it, that there are people cheating.
But you can't take one story or 2 stories and presume.
Well, one of the accusations towards why there is such a high number of people off on long-term sick, and it is for things like mental health and chronic pain, which are very hard to prove, is that universal credit has become so hard to access that lots of people are moving off of that and on to sick leave. Do you believe that that's happening? Do you believe that that might be a case?
And I don't know, but I do know that we should be really careful not to demonise people who say they've got mental health conditions. But I do agree with Isabel that some people are faking it. I do believe
you think,
that.
Because a lot of these people as well are younger, which is quite a shocking stat, that a lot of these people
I
are
am
in
shocked.
the early 20s.
I did not know.
And so does that suggest actually that we are breeding less resilient youngsters?
Well, 100% we are, and it's not kind and compassionate, and I know that that's what you want to be. It is not kind and compassionate to make it easy for people to live empty lives doing nothing. It isn't good for people to sit around at home or hang around on the street saying they can't be bothered to get up in the morning or have any structure for the day. They hopefully have decades of healthy lives. These are young people. They hopefully have healthy lives ahead of them. The statistics for young people living on benefits because they've got some so-called mental health condition are absolutely shocking. These are young people who need to be building futures, not condemned to dependency on the state.
So-called, because you're not the expert, nor am I. Some of them
I'm the expert in common sense and what I see.
Maybe mentally disturbed, mentally distressed.
Well, then they need to,
also there's other things to take into consideration. In fact, one of the individuals that you're talking about there, Isabel, has ADHD and autism, which
I think it's overdiagnosed. There's too much of that, too much medicalising people saying they've got ADHD. Of course, some people genuinely have it. Of course they do.
But your idea would be to work around that. That's
my
fine
idea would be to find
to
things for them that they can productively do. There's plenty of things that people with ADHD can do. Don't just condemn them to the scrap heap saying, here you are, we'll give you a few handouts while you have no future. That's not smart.
I want to go to a call. Helen from Dorset, what do you think about Rishi Sunak's plans?
I think that's a very, very good idea. I know people who live on the handouts, and I know they're happy to do so, and I'm sure half of the people who say that they can't work can.
Well, there's an element that they might be able to do something, but is it the place of the government to force them into employment when maybe they're not ready? I mean, let's face it, Helen, what employer is going to want to employ somebody that doesn't want to be there?
Well, they're going to have to get off their arse and do some work, aren't they?
Okay, well, let's stay with bottom, Helen, but okay. But if you're the employer, then let's look at it at the other side of things, because they aren't all going to get employed by the government. So if you are an employer, you're running a company, is this going to be the kind of individual that you want to be working for you?
Yes. And I'll tell you what else. They don't ought to be off sick. They don't ought to be off sick in the first place. I don't think half these people who've got this ADHD and God knows what else, I don't think there's anything wrong with them.
Okay, I don't think the ADHD and autism is the reason that they would have a sick note. There has to be other things involved, but certainly it would make it more difficult for them potentially to go into a workplace or certain workplaces. So you just point blank don't believe 50% of these people that are on.
But Helen, what expertise do you have? How do you know? What makes you think you can... No, hang on. Can I ask the question? How do you know half of them are not what they say they are? How do you come to that conclusion?
I come to the conclusion by listening to people, by talking to people, and listening to what they say, and they just haven't got anything wrong with them.
Okay,
so
Helen,
that's real life experience. I mean, you asked the question, how does she know? She knows because she lives in communities where people are actually admitting that there's nothing
she's
wrong
not
with
qualified to make medical judgments. Medical judgment. She said...
Yasmin, she didn't need to make a medical judgment. She said that in her community, there are people who say that they're not really needing it. She did. She said
they say.
They say they don't need
by
to
talking
work.
to people. I'm sorry.
Okay,
you can't make those judgments.
Whatever Helen has experienced is her experience, and she believes that 50% of people are lying. Ian from Staffordshire, what's your thoughts on Rishi Sunak's plan? I believe you're currently off sick. Ian.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I believe you're currently off on long-term sick. Is that right?
Yeah, I was in the. I got medically discharged in the Air Force in October 97, after doing 11 and a half years. I saw one of the top consultants for backs in the country. He said I'd never work again. I worked for a building society, and I had 10 months off sick out of 14, and they had to they had to let me go. But just to give you an idea, I've got several problems. I've had 2 professors, 17 consultants, 6 registrars, 21 physios, just to give you an insight into how many people I've tried to get help from.
So, Ian, I think we can safely say you have a bad back then. But can we say that there is nothing that you can do?
There isn't. I'm on so many pills now.
Painkillers?
The last day I did work, I had to take so many pills in that I only managed to do 2 phone calls with the building society.
So actually, strangely, it's not actually the back that's stopping you, it's the medication that you're having to take for the pain. Of course, Ian, I understand. But Isabel, when it comes to somebody like Ian, Rishi Sunak's going to try and find something for Ian to do.
I disagree. I mean, it's clearly a straight up and down case. You know, he has been to the ends of the earth. He has seen more healthcare professionals than most of us will hopefully see in a healthy lifetime. And evidently, it's been tested to the limits. He can't work. And I'm not sitting here saying people like that, or people with cancer, or people with other chronic, very debilitating conditions should be forced to work. Of course not. It's a civilised
Ian
society.
will be allowed not to work?
Of course he can't work. He's just explained compellingly why he can't. But he is an extreme case. There are huge numbers of people who absolutely can
But what
work.
Rishi is doing potentially will make it harder for someone like Ian to get the benefits that he needs, because he's going to not only have to see all of those medical health professionals, but he's also going to have to jump through so many hoops in order to get the benefits.
I very much doubt it will be particularly much harder, because there's so much evidence there on all his files. So no sensible government, not that they're always sensible, are going to waste time over analysing that case. And I'm afraid if some people at the margins, which is not Ian, have to work a little bit harder to prove their situation, and that is no bad thing.
Let's have a look at what Rishi Sunak said earlier today.
A staggering 94% of those signed off sick were simply written off as not fit for work. Well, that's not right. And it was never the intention. We don't just need to change the sick note, we need to change the sick note culture so that the default becomes what work you can do, not what you can't.
I mean, is that quite inspirational? Susan from Angus, I'm going to go to you first. You just heard what Rishi had to say there. What's your thoughts?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I'd like to get a job.
Okay, so
I'm not on any not on any benefits whatsoever. I left school on a Friday in 1975 and started working on Monday. I've worked all my life, different places, from factory work, heavy manufacturing, driving forklifts, you name it, into the call centre culture, into the caring sector and cleaning. Now, I've been out of work, personal reasons, but I didn't claim any benefits, and I tried to get back into the job market, and it's been horrendous. So I'd like to know where all these people on the sick are refusing these jobs, don't want to get out of bed in the morning to go to a job, where here I am, trying to get a job, and I can't.
Well, Susan, actually, you bring up a totally different argument here, that actually maybe there isn't enough work out there for the people that are off sick. So maybe, which is the older end of the spectrum and the younger end of the spectrum. So there's maybe work out there for the middle-aged, if that's what we want to call ourselves, but not much work for those at the top end and the bottom end. Do you mind me asking how old you are? Would that be a rude thing to ask?
I'm 65, and I'm 66 in September, when I finally, which I've earned all my life, get the state pension.
Yeah.
What's keeping me going at the moment is 2 occupational pensions from 2 long-term employers I had in the past.
But you would have liked to have supplemented that with work, Susan.
And my savings are dwindling so fast now, and I need a little job. And can I get one? It's a minefield. You've got to go through online recruitment agencies. You have to have a CV. You go through all this. It took me 2 hours this morning just to apply for a school cleaner.
And a lot of it's online as well. I mean, there you go, Isabel. That's another problem that these individuals are going to have to face. Not only that, but then telling your employer that you've been on long-term sick, that'll put you right down at the bottom of the pile, I imagine, too. It's not an easy fight for them in order to get a job.
Yeah, but are you saying that because it's difficult to find a job, we shouldn't ask people to try?
Well, there's another point, but Susan, thank you very much for calling up and sharing that with us. That's really interesting, and I really hope if you wanted to find work for the next few months, you can. Jane from Lincolnshire, what's your views on this?
I'm quite upset actually with the lady with the blonde hair.
Isabel?
I've been yes. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. I've been on long-term sick. I've got emotionally unstable, borderline personality. I've also had a tumour removed from my spine, and I've got arthritis in my knees.
Okay.
I've had some of my benefits cut, and I'm in the process of trying to get those back. So it's not just an easy thing to just sit back and get benefits. You have to fight for them. You don't have face-to-face medical things now. It's over the telephone. So how can someone say that I'm not entitled to these benefits when I can't see them?
So when you say that you're talking to somebody over the phone, this is in order to get your benefits, you have to speak to somebody over the phone?
Yes, instead of before COVID, you could actually go and have a meeting with them. I have worked as a hairdresser for over 40 years. So I've paid into the system, yet there's people around here, they get up to £500 for being an alcoholic. And I don't find that totally unfair.
I mean, I think that's an odd way to word that, Jane. I mean, I think if you've got an addiction as severe as alcoholism, there's probably other reasons that they obviously can't work and support that they need to, Jane, but that's not to say that you don't need that support. Which element, because you named 3 different things there, which one of your illnesses is holding you back from working full time?
I would say all of them, because borderline personality, you can wake up in the morning feeling great. Sometimes you find it hard to get out of bed. With my back, if I sit too long, that hurts. If I put my legs up with my arthritis, that can get to, so I'm having to move around to stop me. And then I've got the mental side of it that I want to get out, but I can't get out.
Well, what if somebody said to you, Jane, that actually getting out is the very thing that you should do? You know, moving around with your back is probably a good idea, but being able to take breaks, there must be some sort of job that you could do that would allow for those things, and an employer that would make things easier for you.
When I left school in 85, 86. So computers we didn't have any, so I haven't got any computer skills. My skills were with my hands, being a hairdresser. So
if the government were willing to help you with that? I'm trying to work through what Rishi Sunak's going to have to work through. What if the government offered you training for computers?
Then I would be happy to train on the computer, but would an employer allow me to take a break to stand up every 15 minutes or put my leg up because I've got arthritis?
Jane, I can't answer those questions, but for sure employers are going to have to make some sort of allowances if they're going to employ people that have issues. I mean, that happens.
I just don't, Jane, I hear what you're saying about you left school in the 80s when there weren't computers, but you've had many decades since then to learn how to use computers. I mean, not all of us learned how to use IT systems at school. They're constantly evolving. I mean, I don't enjoy doing spreadsheets. I wasn't taught them at school, but I've made the effort to try. I'm not very good at it. You've had decades in which you could have learnt those skills.
You didn't have
but she was the one that's saying that she can't get jobs because she doesn't have IT skills.
But, but if she would have to now have somebody to teach her, so that would have to be made available.
There's loads of those programs available.
Actually, Isabel, have a heart.
It isn't about, you have to have a head. You have to have a head.
No, have a heart. She's
I've got
just
both.
explained to you, she worked, she's unable to work, she's described the mental and physical conditions she's in. And then she said, you know, I can't use a computer. And I think this is all part of the benefits grounger culture that the right is obsessed with.
But as you can see as well, Richie's going to have to work around a lot of stuff in order to get people back into work.
I completely believe what she said.
Would
you show her some kindness?
It isn't actually, the debate we're having isn't about kindness.
It should be.
Okay,
well, I think
we're going to have to wrap this up now.
Both.
Jane, I wish you all the best with your health. Thank you very much for calling in and sharing those struggles with us. If you are struggling with your mental health, there is help available. You can contact the Samaritans. That number is 116 123 116 123, 24 hours a day, so do call. Also, Mind offers support. The number for them is 0300 123 3393. That's 0300 123 3393.